Hello, podcast listeners. Thank you so much for your support this season. We've had so many important and incredible conversations. This will be our final episode of season 2. We'll be taking a little break for a few weeks to focus on recharging and finding many more guests for our incredible episodes. We'll be back on March 15th for the first episode of season 3. And it's quite the interview. I spoke with a midwife who focuses not only on bringing in new life, but also on caring for those approaching death and all of the work and the preparation and the celebration that it takes to have a home funeral. She spoke specifically about what it's like to support families after a perinatal loss. So stay tuned for that amazing episode. Thanks again for your support and for remembering to take good care of yourself as you do for your clients. We really need you. And also thank you for supporting our podcast. Please like and share it wherever you watch. And if you can leave us a review, it helps us in our reach so that we can talk to and support more midwives. Thanks, everyone. See you in season 3.
Hi, my name is Augustine Colebrook, and I'm the principal at Midwifery Wisdom Collective. I speak on this podcast about big picture political issues and the future of our profession.
Hey y'all, I am Jamara, and I'm a midwife. I'm also a birth justice activist. And this season, I am looking forward to sharing stories of Black midwives and the communities they serve.
Hello, beloved birth community. I'm Angela Love, nurse midwife since 2004, preceptor, and mother. I have a home birth practice called Midwife Love and a national telehealth practice called Midwife RX. My mission is to keep birth choices available and to educate the next generation of midwives for our daughters and grandchildren. Matriarchy now.
I'm Layla Wyatt. I get to share with you the voices of student midwives from across the country and beyond. This season, we focus on those students who just graduated, are about to sit for the NARM, or did yesterday, and we get tips and tricks for you for what happens at the end of the student midwife journey.
Welcome back to the Midwifery Wisdom Podcast. I'm Augustine, and today I am joined by Ginger Breedlove. And I think is it Dr. Ginger Breedlove? Should we call you that?
No. It's a PhD.
Okay.
And I rarely, when I use it, Augustine, is when I'm in a conversation and I really want to make a point. Otherwise, I really never have that title as a part of my conversation.
Awesome. Yes, that's a great time to pull it out. Let's start with an introduction. Do you want to tell us your intro? You've done so many things in your life, past president of ACNM, you've written a book, you've run a big national organization. Tell us more. What do you do? What do you love to do? What's your passion project right now?
I think one of the things you're going to hear me say a lot in our conversation today is we, because I don't work alone, nor have I, in the many things that have happened over my career. And that history is foundational to I think, what's happened today in the decisions that I've made about gathering other experts around me. I started out as a labor and delivery nurse, and very quickly was frustrated in how families were treated. And there was a physician who I admired immensely, way ahead of her time, part of the 60s movement, who was managing labor in a hospital very differently than her colleagues. And she, another nurse, and I left together to start a birth center in Topeka, Kansas. And, my roots in labor and delivery were back in the era when I was a scrub tech and, handed the physician the instruments and cleaned the walls and the floor. And, it was a time when women were still strapped in with leather restraints. Fathers were not allowed in the delivery room. And I saw a lot of violence. I mean, that really impacted me because I grew up on I would say a semi-farm, helped deliver sheep and cattle. And was being juxtaposed with how we were treating humans, and it really bothered me. And had spent a lot of my young career in debate, formal debate in high school and college, and I really loved and thrived on arguing with evidence. And I knew that you can argue both ways, but I always wanted to defend the way that I thought was the way. So we started a birth center in Kansas. It was the first state licensed birth center in the nation. Now, there were other birth centers, but they didn't have state regulations. And I did that for 14 years and early on went to midwifery school. Came back and continued that job where we offered home and birth center birth. So that's the foundation of where I come from. And life happens, right? Your journey is unpredictable. And I ended up divorcing and remarrying and moved from Topeka to Kansas City, where both my husband and I grew up. And it was like, okay, what's next? And helped start the first hospital-based midwifery service in Greater Kansas City. One had not existed in the metro area before and was recruited by a maternal fetal medicine doc, who's now one of our consultants, whose daughter is a midwife, who had done his MPH while in med school on the home birth midwives in the Boot Hill of Missouri. And I'm going to first say Dr. Gase, and then I'm going to call him John. He understood the culture of midwifery in the state of Missouri. And he then went, to work with midwives in California, both as his time in the Navy evolved and then when he finished, and was the chief maternal fetal medicine doc of the practice where we started midwifery in Kansas City. And he knew the value of midwifery in the hospital setting. And that's where midwifery grew in the hospital setting. I sort of ran that practice as the chief midwife for about 10 years. And then the University of Kansas, with some other influencers, wanted to start a midwifery education program. They did not have one. So I went about 3 miles across the state line to do that. And had a wonderful opportunity in academia, which I never thought I would have an affinity for. And that's where I finished my PhD, although at another university than where I was working. My focus of that doctoral study was on the really emerging community health worker to doula model in Chicago, and studied a population there for about 3 years that was looking at how doulas from the community trained in a model that Dr. Paulo Freire, a Brazilian educator, believes that transformational learning can happen through to become doulas for young women in particular who had very little social support, and their social determinants of health were probably some of the worst you could ever measure. So I was looking at how the doulas experience supporting teens influence their journey after, and found that many of the doulas that were trained went on to become midwives, went on to become healthcare providers in other ways. But their exposure to that and their empowerment to become a partner of support to someone really was profound. So that sort of got me into dabbling about writing a book. Rachel Abramson is the lead author, but I'm the second author in this book on community-based doulas used by Health Connect One, and it's widely used around the country. So my focus on midwifery and doulas sort of merged at that point in my career.
So cool. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I mean, I went
there's a lot of people that wonder how they can be separated, right? Because they're so integral to support. So,
I don't think it's about separatism. I think it's about how we can be together. I mean, my entire career has been experiencing things and finding ways to build bridges. And I, to be honest with you, I sort of got tired of being an educator, and life went on through another series of a couple jobs. But where I'm at today came from realizing that there are many needs across the country, both by midwives, providers, and institutions that want to engage in the discussion of midwifery, but don't know how to do it. And they're looking for help. And I decided in sort of, if you call it the sunset of your career, I wasn't ready to like be done. And are there ways that I could help? So I created this company 5 years ago with the goal of creating a very diverse expert base and sort of stepping away from it when I turned 70. So I'm still on that trajectory. It's exciting. And I'm glad we can help in some way. It's about the greater good, you know? How can we help others help themselves?
It's amazing, really. Your career is so illustrious. It's exciting to hear about all these different pathways. I have a few follow-up questions. I guess my first question would be like, you've worked in the community setting, you've worked in a hospital setting, you've worked in academia, you've worked in policy, you've been an entrepreneur. What was the hardest and what is your favorite?
What was the hardest? Academia. Even more so than working in a large health system. I worked in a very large, we call them RO1 institutes, very large schools of nursing, where there are large pools of research money. With a PhD, you're expected to compete and become tenured. And I don't like games. In fact, I sort of fight them. And I think tenure is designed for lazy people, not for people who work hard. That's basically my opinion. And it's a constant challenge to prove yourself. And if people don't see the value in my work, then that's their problem, not mine. That's kind of my attitude. So I fought that model a lot. My favorite is what I'm doing right now, to not have a boss, to be in a team where we each bring creative vision, have good discourse, find resolution towards something that we're willing to reevaluate and maybe change the course a bit. It's so much fun. And it's also hard. I never thought we would grow as fast as we are right now. And so trying to keep the business model at a trajectory that—
You picked the right name.
provides a healthy balance of what we want to do, because many of my colleagues also have other jobs. I don't.
Yeah, it's hard when you've got a team that's not quite as available as you. It's sometimes hard to get all the passion and get it out there and all move at the same speed. Well, so you spend a lot of time now advising midwives on how to be entrepreneurs. And I think one of the things that you've done is actually create financing models. And are you helping people get funding to start birth centers? Tell us more about what you're doing right now.
That's an interesting question. I talk about our scope of work in buckets, right? We help individual practitioners. Some are not midwives. We help institutions who want to start midwifery services. We help people interested in birth centers or alongside units, and we work with universities starting education programs. So those are sort of our buckets. When we talk about individual midwives wanting to start practice, couple things that we've done. We created a pro forma for midwifery startups. We spent a lot of time and energy working with accountants on this tool, so that in addition to a business plan, which we see as the narrative portion of starting your business, there's a metric Excel sheets that capture 5 years of expenses, cost, revenue, depreciation, amortization, things like that help them speak to people who can give them money, whether that's an angel investor, a line of credit, a big loan. You need those numbers to convince people. We do not help people.
Venture capitalists are more and more getting into birth centers, That's just,
I'm not sure how I feel about that, but that's another topic.
I know. I know. I feel same thing. I love this idea of teaching qualified midwives and other providers how to be entrepreneurs. It's a lot of what I do. I don't know if you follow Leslie Cornwell. She's doing a lot of that too, because it seems like lots and lots of incredibly dedicated, passionate people go to midwifery school, but there's not very much business in midwifery school, and they don't have the skills to really run their own businesses. What part of helping midwives become entrepreneurs are you finding you have to do the most of? What's surprising to you?
Sort of matching their passion for clinical practice to the passion of how to learn either to run their business or find the people to help them run their business. It's sort of like an afterthought. And when you're so busy in the clinical realm, it can be hard to set aside the time to understand the complexity of business. Like people get their business degrees over many years, and so do midwives get their education over many years. But there seems to be a lack of understanding the investment it takes to learn or find people you will pay to help you run your business. And that has nothing to do with starting it. It's like a continuum of knowledge and assistance.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. It is such a learning curve for some. One of the things that Leslie and I have been brainstorming recently is, and we invite you to participate too. We feel like we need to start like the ancillary service provider options for the midwives. Like they need lawyers, and they need accountants, and they need cleaning crews, and there's all these ancillary service providers, bookkeepers and assistants, office administrators, in order to run it successfully. And the work of like vetting all those people and then teaching them essentially how to run a front office of midwifery is really exhausting.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the best resource and what we tell people is to start by learning the foundation of business, right? So we encourage a lot of the clients we work with to get either a SCORE mentor or an SBA mentor. Those are retired business people who provide free services that help you begin to learn the language of business and can also help you network with quality attorneys, maybe free services at a law school, accountants familiar with healthcare. The business world really is as connected as the healthcare world. And we've had a lot of success with people going to their own community leaders to help find those types of services. We certainly do guide people to typically vendors that we think can provide answers to questions. Like we recommend 3 or 4 different malpractice carriers, but we don't do that for them. I think at some point it's like anyone who needs to graduate, cutting the cord. It's a period of support over time, and then people just have to learn how to do it if it's going to be sustainable.
It's so true. It's so true. Well, so there's a lot of politics in CPM world. I imagine there's also politics in the CNM world. What's the most frustrating for you when you're dealing with the institutions or the organizations or the education or the legislation or any of the parts that create the CNM world? What's the most frustrating for you in that arena?
I'll talk about AMC B midwives. So those certified by the American Midwifery Certification Board. Those are CNMs and CMs.
Yeah, CMs and CNMs.
Right.
Sure.
They are. They are.
Uh-huh.
I've been programmed to not leave them out because they're now licensed in 10 states. It's a combination.
I know. So exciting.
It is exciting. It's a lack of awareness by midwives and the barriers that they're trying to break down. So it's 2 sides of a coin. again, getting back to the busy midwife, I did it full scope practice, 25 years. It's exhausting. Little time left over for the people you love, some R&R, and oh, by the way, I have professional issues that need my attention. That's the last piece of what somebody has time to do. But if you look at many issues, Augustine, Medicaid equity, compensation challenges, contract challenges, hospital privilege challenges, it's endless. And you can't tackle them all at once. So there's power in number, trying to get a state, where I think change happens faster than the federal level, a state to organize and rally themselves around an issue is the strategy we try to use.
Brilliant. I have kind of a difficult question for you. I hope you're willing to answer, but kind of a philosophy thing. What do you think is at the root of the essential animosity between CNMs and CPMs nationwide?
I'll first say I think that's a pretty general assumption. I can't tell you how many very close friends of mine are CPMs and have been for a very long time.
And likewise. And yet I still hear in so many communities about really negative relationships. And I just wonder, like, what's behind that, do you think?
I think part of it is, and if you've followed me over very many years, you know my feeling about regulation. I think defining the professional term midwife that is engaged in the exchange of commerce, so there are services for money, is part of the root of the problem. And in any business, in America anyway, in most countries, where there's commercial activity, an exchange of money between two people, there are typically legal expectations of that service. And when we have a title so misunderstood between states in terms of regulations, between people, between payers, it is a quagmire that we have not figured out a way to get through. And until midwives in general, all of us, are willing in this country to define a midwife with multiple pathways that has some form of consistent definition and regulation in all 50 states, we're not going to get out of this mess.
That's so true. I think
it's just my opinion. I mean, people disagree with me, and that's okay. But
I think you're. I mean, I think it has to be either or. Like, if we could play devil's advocate for a minute, if there was no licensing and regulation, there probably wouldn't be animosity. Or if everything was regulated, there probably wouldn't be animosity, because the definitions are clear.
Yeah, but to me, Augustine, and this is a difficult conversation, it isn't about professional war, it's about public safety. And people understanding when I want to hire you as a midwife to take care of me, that everybody in the United States understands. Just like there are a variety of physicians, am I going to take care of my heart disease from family medicine or a cardiologist? I just need to know.
Right.
Then I can make my personal decision. We don't have that around the professional
Not at all.
term.
Yeah, not at all. Mm-mm. So it's this ambiguity, lack of definition, lack of clarity for the public and the provider and the payer and the licensing, all the organizations.
All of
that
them.
Makes it so contentious.
Yeah.
Because people are kind of fighting for their position.
That's exactly right. Exactly right.
I agree. Well, so can we stay here for a minute and keep going a little bit further? So while there's this kind of animosity, let's say, even though you and I feel very passionately about all the types of midwives, and some of my best friends are CNMs, but let's say that now, while we know that there's this animosity nationwide among CNMs, CPMs, CMs, and I would say even in certain states, naturopathic physician, doctor, midwives, right? Because they kind of have 21 states have that dual degree. There's another type of birth provider out there that is even more contentious, I think, and that's this birth keeper phenomenon. Is this reaching you at all? Are you aware of this?
I am aware of it. I don't know the degree of influx into communities. I would honestly say I'm very aware of the term, also free birth coming from Australia, New Zealand, Europe, but I'm not sure how much that's integrated into perinatal services yet.
Well, they're definitely not integrated, and I think they don't want to be.
Well, I don't mean integrated. I guess maybe what I want to say is what's the volume of their presence in communities?
I think it's a lot more than a lot of people know. There are active schools teaching birth keepers around the U.S. and workshops, and very active on social media locations.
Yeah, I'm not familiar, Augustine.
Okay.
Again, my stance would not change. I don't think it should stand to like public safety, and that's the floor. And if there,
but it's kind of an interesting place, right? Because who determines public safety?
Well, do you want your pharmacist to not be registered and regulated?
No, but do you want your herbalist to be? I mean, it's an interesting place. I think it's going to be interesting to see how things come out. I mean, I don't know. Did you see that the recent court outcome in Nebraska?
No,
did you follow that at all?
I know there's one going on. I know the attorney who was representing the defense.
Yeah.
And I heard that it came out successful, but I don't know much about it.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating. The final verdict in that case, the judge cited 2 case laws that I think will be quite fantastic and have long-term implications, arguing essentially that midwifery is not the practice of medicine. And number 2 is that women deserve the right to choose where and with whom they have their babies. And that's pretty exceptional, because I don't think that's been in any kind of large scale case.
You know what?
So
I completely agree with that. Here's my point. It's about a professional title. If people want to become birth keepers, then so be it. If you want to call yourself a midwife, these are the regulations and the educational pathways that you go through to attain that legal title. So honestly, I believe in free choice in anything. I just put a meme up today about how we try to put people in boxes that fit blah, blah, blah. But don't call yourself a midwife if you're a birth keeper. Be a birth keeper and define it. That's fine with me. But it's muddying the water when people say, oh, I'm a birth keeper, but I'm really a midwife. They're not the same.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the public doesn't know the definition.
There you go.
And
that's
so
the problem.
They think they're hiring a midwife, and then the midwife doesn't have resuscitation skills, or doesn't have any pit to stop a hemorrhage, or doesn't know how to resolve a dystocia. And then that's public safety, back to that public safety issue, right? So
if the family knows the qualifications of the person caring for them and have a very clear, whether you want to call it shared decision-making or a contract they sign, but they're very clear on the education, the skills, the tools they have to assist in case of an emergency. If someone knows all of that and that's what they choose, so be it. I really don't think there's anything wrong with that. And it happens globally. But in our country, in such a highly litigious model of archaic obstetric practices, I understand why people are seeking that out. I completely understand it.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I do too. I mean, in truth in advertising, I was an unassisted birthing mother myself 28 years ago, 25 years ago, because of the same thing. And I don't necessarily recommend that people choose what they don't want instead of choosing what they do want.
Right.
But I certainly understand the motivation, and I definitely understand the midwives, doulas, birth keepers who are escaping any affiliation with the system in order to avoid what is happening, which is really inhumane in a lot of situations. So like, I understand it. But like, where do we find the balance? And I think we're many years out from that.
Oh, we're many years out. It's already been 45 for me.
Yeah.
I mean, we're many years out.
I know, right? I know, right? Are you so exhausted yet? Like, how are you continuing to do it? Like, tell me. What's your secret?
I do get frustrated, but my mantra is, whatever work we do, it has to be for the greater good. And that's not just for the profession. It's for the people that we serve.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Well, apropos the obstetric reality, I feel like, and I don't have necessarily studies per se. I mean, there are serious, amazing studies coming out of Australia on this topic, but I don't know that they're coming out in the US. But I feel like all the empirical reports is that obstetrical violence is really on the rise.
I don't know that it's on the rise, Augustine.
Podcast.
I don't know that it's on the rise.
Maybe it's just awareness.
I think we're uncovering it. I mean, we started this conversation with me saying I watched it.
Yeah.
45, 6 years ago. It's just now being described, operationalized in research. It's not rising.
Kind of like the Me Too movement. It was always happening. It's just now we have awareness of it. That makes sense.
We've coined it.
Yeah. That makes sense. Well, I had a fascinating conversation with obstetric anesthesiologist.
How fun.
Who is also has extensive trauma-informed education and runs a clinic specifically to help women giving birth who have trauma experience hopefully a trauma-free birth experience. And she was saying that it's not just the obstetrics, it's all of the other professions around. It's nursing, and it's CNMs, and it's anesthesiologists, and it's medical assistants, everyone in the space. It's not just obstetricians. Like, everyone entering the birth space has to be trauma-informed and educated on how they're treating people. I wonder, are you running into this at all? Is this part of the reason why some of the CNMs approach you asking to get out of the system? Is this part of it?
So from the professional person's lens, yes, they're not talking necessarily about how they are forced to assist a patient. They're more traumatized by the system in which they work. So I'm sure it plays a part in it, but certainly, we talk almost weekly to midwives either wanting to leave the profession or the job that they're in.
Yeah, it's such a crisis, isn't it? I feel like some really astounding, powerful midwives are leaving because they're burnt out and they're overwhelmed.
Yeah, exactly.
How does your practice, how does your consulting firm address the overwhelm and the burnout? What kind of counsel do you give?
We provide them with a wants and needs tool. It's a way to sort of do self-reflection and really begin to explore for themselves as they think about future forward, rather than trauma backward. What do they want? Where are they in their career? Not only what do they want, what do they need? And we ask them to write a sentence about what their dream job would look like if it were possible. And at that point,
beautiful.
We, spend a fair amount of time sort of helping people regain the notion that when they feel like they have control back and they're open to moving out of the anxiety, depression, hopelessness that they're in, it's about self-awareness and self-control. And when you're ready to take back your power, you're able to move in the direction that will get you to a new place. Oftentimes it's almost like the abuse cycle, right? You feel stuck, You don't know how to get out of it. You continue to take it. You become exhausted and have no energy to figure out your plan forward. So that's kind of an idea of how I would approach sort of this, and then provide them with networking opportunities, places to go, sort of look for other jobs. And quite frankly, when people are that frustrated, it's a perfect opportunity to talk about starting your own business, taking control back to that degree.
Definitely. Getting a little more power back and a little more say in what's coming next.
Yeah, it's about self-determination.
I love that. Exactly. Yeah. When we talk about, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like that is really important. And if you're living, being controlled by other people, it can be super exhausting to the soul almost.
Yeah. Well, we think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, sort of self-transcendence is the very top. It's not on that pyramid, but it really came out in his later work. And that really is
self-actualization.
A starting point, instead of it being at the top. So
I agree. It's almost a starting point. I agree entirely.
Yeah.
Well, so what are some of your future projects? What are you hoping will happen for midwifery?
It's one of the things that I share with people that are sort of looking towards their future. I have a tendency of about every 10 years starting a new job, which gives you creative energy. And with Midwives, we're at 5 years. As I said, my goal is to sort of exit in a major capacity when I turn 70, which is just a few years away. We started a billing service, and Arden Schwenker is the individual who oversees that billing service. It's growing very quickly. So that's a major new project that we added. We have a new consultant.
That's exciting.
Who joined us that is very interested in creating a model of midwifery matchmaking. And what I mean by that is a different slant on a recruiting firm where we can help people find each other. And it came from a job fair. I hosted this job fair in the summer last year and had over 35 employers and maybe 40 some midwives, each looking for the fit, and discovered that a lot of marketing and advertising is not working in terms of how people can find the job. And midwifery is in high demand right now, at least on the CNM/CM side. We're also venturing into providing CE. We just finalized plans with the University of Alaska Med School and their AHEC up there to go to Anchorage in June and provide a full day of live CME for all types of providers, using experts from Alaska and members of our team. So we're very excited to go up there in June.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's exciting.
I love continuing ed. It's been the focus for my organization, and it's so inspiring to kind of take the bead on what's happening for those people on the ground, what they need, what they're frustrated by, what they're succeeding at, and then where the holes in their knowledge are, and to just really provide holistic education. I love it. It's really exciting.
Yeah, we're excited.
That's so great. Well, so where are you now in the world?
I live in Kansas City. So I'm in Kansas.
So you're back home. Yeah. So you're back home. Okay.
A lot of traveling in the non-COVID period.
I figured. Yeah. I figured your business calls you away. You do site visits and counseling for midwives wherever they are.
We do. So it just depends on the client, right? If we're helping an education program get started or helping a hospital integrate a midwife service, most of our work is actually online. But if we need to do a site visit, we certainly can. Most of my time away is speaking, more than actual client interaction.
Yeah. Do you still have your finger in midwifery at all? Are you still doing
any prenatals or postpartums visiting birth centers, or are you all in your
No,
advocacy organization?
No, I do not do clinical work. Leslie Rathbun, one of my original partners, still owns and operates the Charleston Birth Center and is actively practicing. And another newer consultant, Denise Frizelka, is an active midwife in Madison who actually was at my home birth and was the first birth that she ever witnessed and launched her into midwifery school.
Oh, that's such a great story.
It is. It's a great story.
How amazing.
Yeah.
And that was how many years ago? I imagine you didn't have a baby yesterday. I mean,
no. He's what, in his late 30s now. And so she's been a midwife 25 years in full practice.
What a long and beautiful relationship you guys must have had watching her go through all those stages.
It's fantastic. Amazing. I really facilitated and was her mentor while she was at UCSF. We did her integration at our practice in Kansas City. Then we hired her. She was one of my partners at our hospital-based practice. Oh my gosh. And then she helped teach midwifery at the University of Kansas, my 10 years there. So she's a nanny, a daughter, a best friend, and a colleague. It's pretty cool.
That's incredible. What an amazing journey. I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, I was at a birth yesterday and
cool.
And the mama said, this is so amazing. I think I need to become a midwife. And it made me think of all those mamas who have got to, experience midwifery from all the midwives and then become midwives themselves. And
that's right.
It's such a lovely full circle.
It's amazing.
And that happened for you, but kind of in reverse. That's great. Yeah. So you had a home birth yourself and one kiddo or more than that?
I have 4 sons. The first 2 were born in the birth center that I helped open. The third was born at home.
Amazing.
And the fourth was born in the hospital because the docs that I worked with said, sorry, Ginger, but, we can't support your home birth. And I said, okay, I'll be in and out pretty quickly. So my labor team came to my home. I got there in 45 minutes, had my 4th son, and was home in an hour and a half. So but they had never seen that before in the hospital. It's a very big, prominent hospital, that all the athletes in Kansas City go to. And it does have some residency training there. But at that point, I think I'd been the chief of that service for a couple of years. I was 41. And, they were all like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm just having a baby, No, I'm not going to have a monitor. No, you're not going to take my baby to the nursery. Yes, I'm going to leave very quickly. If you want to do AMA, that's fine. It all went great.
That's
and it
fantastic.
Really taught them a lot about many issues because we admitted and discharged our patients. They didn't have IVs. We didn't draw blood. They had food and fluids in labor. They were in the water. We couldn't do water birth at the time, but I was asked to come bring a birth center into a hospital, and I had left Topeka, and I had to do something in Kansas City. And I knew this physician knew and trusted the midwifery model of care. And that's what we did. We created a birth center in the hospital. We took care of the newborn. We admitted the newborn, discharged the couplet at 6 to 8 hours if they wanted. Many did not want that. Very, very, very few of our families had epidurals, probably less than 10%. And that was over 10 years because of the model of care we provided. So my life experiences has led me to this statement. It doesn't matter where you give birth. What matters, the walls don't matter. What matters are the people that surround you, how you're trusted, respected, and provided safe care.
Gosh, I really believe that. That is the truth right there. That is the truth. That is tweetable, my friend.
Well, I've experienced it all. And so it's and I've attended birth in all settings. So it's sort of like, I know the phrase trust birth sort of is whatever. It's sort of the default of, oh, you don't believe in medicine. That's not what I'm saying. The human species has lasted a very long time on this planet without the massive technology and overmanagement that American women experience today. And
it's kind of
at some
shocking,
point,
isn't it?
it's got to stop, because we are hurting ourselves by believing technology is the answer. People are dying.
Yeah. No, they really are. Yeah. Well,
one of the things I would really like
outrageous.
I would really like to
go ahead.
change the phrase of, wow, this is going to be harsh. I don't know how big a listener base you have, but
say it. We want to hear it.
We talk about maternal death, but it's almost like, how many women do we need to murder to get enough attention to say the crisis is huge?
The crisis is that huge. Yeah. I'm good friends with Robin Lim. I interviewed her for this podcast as well. She's a very outspoken advocate for moms and babies in Bali, and she was trying to get across how dangerous formula feeding was for infants in Indonesia. Yeah. And she was at this advocacy meeting, and the big heads were sitting there, and she was like, babies die every day and it's not safe. And and they were all kind of nodding their heads. Right. And finally it came to her and she looked at the numbers and she was like, okay, let me put it this way. Every single day, the equivalent of a Boeing 747 crashes full of infants every day in Indonesia. That's how dangerous it is. Yeah. And they all gasped and they were like, because if a plane of people crashed every day, it would be at the front of every headline and people would suddenly be figuring out how to solve this. Right. Sure it would. And so they have to figure out how to do with the maternity health crisis in the United States. We have to figure out how to contextualize it for people that aren't numbers people and that don't look at it objectively,
Yeah, I think we've diluted it by the phrase maternal mortality. And I sit on the maternal mortality board here in a state. And if they hear, 700 to 900 women die every year. And that to me is like, if you can save 60% of them, why is that such a hair-raising comment? But if you look at the number that have severe, consequential, some permanent disability or challenges. Yeah. We're talking about 70,000 people. And that's just from the 30 some states that report. We have some states that don't even participate.
Right.
It's
and the morbidity is the problem. Exactly. The morbidity is the problem. Yeah. Yeah. We have I'm here in Southern India, and it's even more atrocious here. Like many countries around the world, they exported American obstetrics in the 70s and 80s. Yep. And it's still that way. Everyone is cut, right? Yep. The ones that don't get cesareans get episiotomies. Everyone is vacuumed. All babies go to the NICU. All parents are separated. It's a really atrocious situation. I know. And it's if the US doesn't solve this, we continue to influence so many other places' decisions. Exactly. And I feel like that's what's been shocking to me to travel. We look at Sweden or the Netherlands or Norway or New Zealand or there are places with outcomes who have midwives at the top of their process, but those places aren't being emulated. Only the United States is being emulated where we have this crisis. And it's we're preaching the same choir here.
You see it more than I see it because of everywhere you've been. Mm-hmm. But I was a delegate to the International Confederation of Midwives when I was president, and sitting in that room in the voting membership and hearing conversations about what goes on in South America, very high C-section rate. Yeah. And then informal discussions about, well, this is, what the US does. This is the standard of care. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah. This is just not good.
It's a crisis. And the women who are injured, here in India, the justification for a C-section is like, save the baby, right? We've
Right.
become this like so hyper-focused on the baby. And so, women if their water breaks and they don't have labor within 3 hours, they have a cesarean. If the cord is around the neck in an ultrasound, they have a cesarean. If they had a cesarean before, they have a cesarean.
Yeah.
Like if there's any meconium visible at any point in labor, they have a cesarean. Like it's just this default cesarean culture. But, and sure, the maternal or the infant mortality in India has definitely gone down over the years, but the maternal morbidity just goes up and up and up. Yep. And when are we going to get people to listen to women?
Yeah. Well, when I do think, the White Ribbon Alliance and other organizations, ICM, are trying really hard to look at respectful care and what that means. But adopting those practices, I don't know what the litigious nature in India is. I know what drives it here in the US. I'm married to an attorney who used to do med mal. Everything centers around liability, but it is unfortunate that the evidence is not what guides practice. And I don't,
so unfortunate.
Change is slow.
That's a very, very PC term, Ginger. Yeah. It's unfortunate. It's actually unethical. It should be illegal.
Sure it is. Yeah.
Oof. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's I can rephrase that. I can say it's maddening.
Yeah.
It just depends on what maddening in the moment, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. How are we going to say it so that it's heard on the large scale? Well, everybody who's in our circle, at least, understands that midwifery is the solution, full stop. And all the extensions and variations, right? Everything to do with what you and I work and stand for is the solution to the global maternity crisis. More midwives, more community workers, more doulas, more of this is what's needed. I know I'm doing some things to help that happen. I know you're doing some things to help that happen. I know many other, Hillary Schlinger and Leslie Cromwell. And I mean, we could keep naming all the people who are trying to work in this. What more could we be doing? Like, what do you feel like the influencers, the change makers, the universities, the organizations, the everyday midwife, what can we do to help shift this tide?
There's a lot of questions in there, Augustine.
I know.
I'll start.
I'm putting you on the spot.
Well, it's not difficult to answer. It's just I'm not sure I'm going to answer them all. I would start with some of the things we're trying to do, and we've been successful helping 3. These are nursing schools start midwifery education programs. They've all now gone through the pre-accreditation process. What I really am trying to do, and I have 2 potential interested parties, I'll say it that way. We don't disclose our clients unless we have permission. Is to combine a academic setting that represents both a master's exit in nursing and an associate degree exit in nursing with a CNM CPM education model. So they are alongside education programs, both accredited, share faculty, share resources, and almost like sort of the model of going from a CNA to an EMT to an RN to a whatever. As people desire and want to progress, those are seamless bridges or steps to higher education if desired. But the pathways all provide an exit with opportunity to get out there and start practicing as midwives. I do not endorse the DNP exit for nursing programs. It's just my stance. I'll help if people want that.
It's not necessary, or it's not necessary. Financially viable.
It's not necessary. We've probably reviewed over 850 contracts. Many are DNPs, Doctor of Nursing Practice. There is no difference in salary, none. And unless they're not going to be a busy clinician, they have little to no time to do any kind of quality-based research. Yeah. So it's to me, it's a little bit of a redundant, expensive degree, and we need people in the workforce not staying in school longer and having a $200,000 debt, and they're not going to get paid much to pay it off. I think we need educational pathways that are very doable. They're out there in other professions that give people the opportunity to bridge their education and their career. And that's what I'm working on right now. I'm hopeful we can get one out there that can be a demonstration project and funded.
That's awesome. How exciting.
The other,
Gosh, Ginger, I'm a cheerleader for you.
Well, thank you. We have to cheer for each other,
love what
right?
you're doing.
We
really do. Yes.
I think we have to. I also believe in the tipping point. I talk about it a lot. We have to get to, whatever you believe that is, around 18% of people
critical mass
understanding what the word midwife means when you say it. Very hard to do when we don't.
What's
know
your percentage?
18%.
What's your percentage? That's what you feel like is tipping point?
Yeah. And it's based on quite a bit of research out there in the field, but consumers need to help drive change, and consumers also need to know why they want to become a midwife. So what I say to midwives is, every time you're with a stranger, tell them what you do and why it's exciting, and you'd be surprised. You know this. I mean, when you talk to a Uber driver or a Lyft driver, and I always engage with who I'm with about what I do.
Yeah.
We have to normalize the profession and encourage people to go to school.
Definitely.
And we can do that.
Definitely.
If we choose to.
Do you think that 18% don't know what a midwife is?
No, we have to reach
18%.
What I mean by the critical mass is from the consumer side. 18% of Americans need to have a midwife attended birth in order to not.
Okay, got it.
Not have to, proselytize what we do every second, which has been my 45 years of practice.
Yeah, because in terms of critical mass of knowledge, I think with Call the Midwife and the Business of Being Born and that Australian show Saving Grace, I think that the actual larger culture knows what the word midwife is. They don't know the specifics, and they don't know the different definitions, and they certainly wouldn't know their own state definition, but they've heard the word.
I don't
you're
know
saying
that I
18%
agree.
have to use midwife.
Yes, have to utilize the services. Midwife attended birth. Let's just say it that way. 18% of the population, but I don't know that I agree that most people know what the word is or means. I mean, I think they've heard the word. No, I don't think they understand what midwifery is in America at all.
Maybe I'm in a bubble. Well, what are we at right now? 14%?
Of midwife attended births, we're in
all locations.
I wish they would add, CPM and other midwife. I don't know that Vital Statistics have done that yet, but we're getting close to 13.
Well, we're at like 1.4%.
So let's say
it's not a huge.
Let's say we're 13 to 14 right now. It's increasing.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Year.
I think we're about 13.
Yeah,
it is. We had a huge increase in community-based birth over the pandemic. Yeah. 20% each year.
And then look at New Mexico and Alaska that are both over 30.
I know, it's exceptional.
That's really where
one valley outside of Anchorage in Alaska, which they have more midwives than physicians, and they have more midwife attended births than physician attended births.
Yes.
They crossed that crazy barrier, but it's only one valley.
Yeah.
But it's coming. Arizona, New Mexico, making huge headway. Washington State's making huge headway. Texas is actually, there's so many birth centers in Austin. I think there are 26 birth centers in Austin alone.
Oh my gosh. I had no idea.
I know. Yeah. Texas has got,
I know they have a lot of birth centers.
530 some, huge amount of birth centers, 530 some CNMs, and just under that, 510 some CPMs.
Wow.
So I think it's the most midwives in any state is in Texas. So that's very exciting. Well, this has been so wonderful to pick your brain and hear your wisdom and expertise. I really hope we can do it again sometime. I really hope that we can stay in touch. I'm so excited for what your organization and your passion is doing for the world of midwifery. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Augustine, for the time to catch up and visit. It's been great.
It's been great. Till next time. Thanks, Ginger.
Bye-bye.